Thank you. You may be seated. First and foremost, I want to thank Yah for my life, for the life of my parents, for the life of my children and my siblings. To the founder and chief of D.C.B, Prince Sherio, Dennis Kaskar, chief men, elders, brothers and sisters, I bid you all Shabbat Shalom. Before I get started, I want to give a special thanks to the sisters of this great organization for all the support and all of the phone calls and encouraging words and texts this week as we're all getting ready for today. Thank you to Deracia and Kenya and Dawn and Nkanzi and Kwana. Thank you, Torah, Rebecca. Thank you so much for putting this together, and thank you for being my reader today. So, how's everybody doing? Good. I just want y'all to know that my family in Alabama is watching, so I have to do a good job or I can't come home in a couple weeks. So I just want to let you know, and I also want to let my family know that I'm good. They always worry about me being here, so I just want them to know that I'm in the midst of great people and that people that love me and care for me, and I'm doing well. So I'm good, Daddy. I'm good. I started out as a Christian. I did not start in this way of life. I was a Christian, a Seventh-day Adventist, and I went to church schools. I went to a historically black Christian college. So when I started looking and reading this week, and when I came into knowledge of self, I had no idea, once you peel back those layers off your eyes, how vivid things become. So when I'm reading and I'm looking at that, all I can see is us. Before, I don't even know what I was saying, but I know I wasn't seeing us. So as I was going through this book of Esther, and I've read it so many times and it's been taught so many times, but this particular time I can actually see myself. I can see people. I know Haman's and in our lives, and we know Mordecai's in our lives, and and it just really made me just open up and just see it all different, better. So I know that this book is 10 chapters long, so we're gonna, you see the seriousness of Rebecca right now? That's because she got my notes. And so Rebecca, we're gonna kind of scoot through this really fast so we can break for lunch. All right? Ready.
Okay, so we're going to start Esther, chapter 1, verse 1. Now it came, hallelujah, sorry. Now it came to pass in the days of Ahasuerus, this is Ahasuerus who reigned from India even unto Ethiopia, over 127 provinces, that in those days, when the king Ahasuerus sat on the throne of his kingdom, which was in Shushan the castle.
So the king Ahasuerus is well known in history, though most commonly known as Xerxes. He inherited a vast Persian empire from his father Darius. And Darius is mentioned in Ezra, Haggai. So we're familiar with this king. We're familiar with his father. During this time, the Israelites had been conquered and are in exile from the time of Nebuchadnezzar. In its day, the Persian Empire was the largest empire ever seen. It covered what we call today Turkey, Iraq, Iran, Pakistan, Jordan, Lebanon, Israel, in modern-day Egypt, Sudan, Libya. It was big. It was a really vast empire. And in those days, Ezra had returned to Jerusalem after it had been conquered by the Babylonians. And after King Xerxes, 40 years after King Xerxes, under his successor, Nehemiah would return to Jerusalem to rebuild the walls in the previous conquered city. Tumshi.
In the 3rd year of his reign, he made a feast unto all his princes and his servants, the army of Persia and Media, the nobles and princes of the provinces, being before him. When he showed the riches of his glorious kingdom and the honor of his excellent majesty, many days, even 180 days. And when these days were fulfilled, the king made a feast unto all the people that were present in Shushan the castle, both great and small, 7 days, in the court of the garden of the king's palace. There were hangings of white, fine cotton, and blue border, with cords of fine linen and purple, upon silver rods and pillars of marble. The couches were of gold and silver, upon a pavement of green and white, and shell and onyx marble. And they gave them drink in vessels of gold, the vessels being diverse one from another, and royal wine in abundance, according to the bounty of the king. And the drinking was according to the law, none did compel. For so the king had appointed to all the officers of his house that they should do according to every man's pleasure.
So, I mean, we partying Persian style. So he set it out. So the first feast was for the government officials. These are the dignitaries. These are all the people that are, highfalutin, and they're coming in because the king really wanted to show, check out my crib, check out my empire. It's great. So that was the first feast, and it lasted for 180 days. And 180 days is 6 months. So I'm trying to figure out how this feast lasts for 6 months, but this man was wealthy. He had a vast empire. It was huge, so I just assumed that people were coming in and out. Like, I don't think everybody was there for 6 months, but people were coming in and out, and it was a 6-month-long party. So the second feast was for, us commoners. He wanted to also show his love and appreciation for the citizens of Shushan, and it lasted 7 days. The basic reasons for this particular feast was, of course, pride. The king wanted to impress his subjects, and they want to have a great display of wealth, majesty, and generosity. But it also could be bringing them into, so there's no revolutions. It's kind of showing them, this is what we had, this is what we have, just to make sure everybody's comfortable.
Also, Vashti the queen made a feast for the women in the royal house, which belonged to King Ahasuerus. On the 7th day, when the heart of the king was merry with wine, he commanded Mehuman, Bizitha, Harbona, Bigtha, and Abagtha, Zethar, and Carcass, the 7 chamberlains that minister in the presence of Ahasuerus the king, to bring Vashti the queen before the king with the crown royal, to show the people and the princes her beauty, for she was fair to look on. But the queen Vashti refused to come at the king's commandment by the chamberlains. Therefore the king was very wroth, and his anger burnt in him.
So Vashti had her own feast. So she was over in her little area with her girls, probably part of the harem, some concubines, some other princes and princesses. So she was having her own feast and doing her own thing. Vashti, when I'm looking at it, is kind of it could be misunderstood. I could see Vashti in a couple ways. When he called and she said no, she knew that the king was drunk, and she also knew that it was men. He was drunk, and probably all these men were drunk as well. And she probably said no. She didn't want to be on display, and she just didn't want to do it anymore. We don't know what happened before that, but she was not having it. It's like no. So when I see Vashti that way, and I also see Vashti in the other way, like she could be just hanging out and having fun with her girls. She could have been drinking as well, having a good time. And then he's calling. She probably showing out, telling him I ain't coming. She probably doing a little bit of that too. So Vashti, it could be a little bit misunderstood. We don't know, but we know she said no. And usually when look at all she gave up by saying no. And also we need to look at, as we start moving through this, how Yah moves. So Yah is all through the scripture, even without us mentioning his name. We know that. But I'm gonna always point it out when she starts reading and say, okay, Yah's moving, so you guys will be able to see that. All right, Tamshi.
Then the king said to the wise men, who knew the times? For so was the king's manner toward all that knew law and judgment. And the next unto him was Karshina, Shethar, Admatha, Tarshish, Medes, Marsina, and Memucan, the 7 princes of Persia and Media, who saw the king's face and sat first in the kingdom. What shall we do unto the queen Vashti according to law? For as much as she has not done the bidding of the king Ahasuerus by the chamberlains. And Memucan answered before the king and the princes, Vashti the queen have not done wrong to the king only, but also to all the princes and to all the peoples that are in the provinces of the king Ahasuerus. For this deed of the queen will come abroad unto all women, to make their husbands contemptible in their eyes, when it will be said, the king Ahasuerus commanded Vashti the queen to be brought in before him, but she came not. And this day will the princesses of Persia and Media, who have heard of the deed of the queen, say the like unto all the king's princes. So will there arise enough contempt and wrath. If it pleases the king, let there go forth a royal commandment from him, and let it be written among the lords of the Persians and the Medes, that it not be altered, that Vashti come no more before King Ahasuerus, and that the king give her royal estate unto another that is better than she. And when the king's decree, which he shall not make, shall be published throughout all his kingdom, great though it be, all the wives will give it to their husbands, honor both to great and small. And the word pleased the king and the princes. And the king did according to the word of Memucan. For he sent letters into all the king's provinces, and to every province according to the writing thereof, and to every people after their language, that every man shall bear rule in his own house, and speak according to the language of his people.
So it sounds like it was, they was mad because they thought that since she was the queen that it was just going to roll downhill, and that the other women were going to be able to tell their men no as well. So that all of that was, some selfish things coming from these men because, to do this without really understanding, why Vashti said no. But Vashti's actions had far-reaching effects that could have undermined her husband, if you think of that way. What he was trying, it could have destabilized the kingdom. She publicly embarrassed her husband, so it could have undermined his image. And Vashti was also inconvenienced by her husband's demand. And when I think about it, when I'm thinking about it as a woman, like there's always a lot of demands on us to pretty much stop what we're doing and then start moving and doing other things. And sometimes the way we handle that is through our attitude or through, just simple answers like no. So we just have to understand that Vashti is misunderstood. Also, there's parts of Vashti that she could have did better. Sometimes when we get to the point where sometimes we just can't do any more like Vashti, we lash out. I'm not going to get into Proverbs 14:1, but if you have time, read on to Proverbs 14:1 today. Tamshi.
Esther chapter 2, verse 1. After these things, when the wrath of King Ahasuerus was assault, he remembered Vashti and what she had done, and what was decreed against her. Then said the king's servants that ministered unto him, let there be sought for the king young virgins fair to look on, and let the king appoint officers in all the provinces of his kingdom, that they may gather together all the fair young virgins unto Shushan the castle, to the house of the women, unto the custody of Haggai the king's chamberlain, keeper of the women, and let their ointments be given them. And let the maiden that pleaseth the king be queen instead of Vashti. And the thing pleased the king, and he did so.
This king. So there's a broader thing that's going on in events. There's really like a 4-year span between Esther's chapter 1 and Esther chapter 2. So there's 4 years. And this was a time where Xerxes had a massive campaign against the Greeks, and he was unsuccessful. He came home a defeated man, and he wanted his wife, or he wanted a woman, or whatever. So this is what led them to start looking for young women, young virgins. So the plan was to assemble a harem of the most beautiful women, like Miss Persian, beauty contest or something like that, and to bring the harem to the king and to choose, and he would choose his most favorite woman and make her queen. Tamshi.
There was a certain Jew in Shushan the castle whose name was Mordecai, the son of Jair, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish, a Benjamite, who had been carried away from Jerusalem with the captives that had been carried away with Jeconiah, king of Judah, whom Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had carried away. And he brought up Hadassah, that is Esther, his uncle's daughter, for she had neither father nor mother, and the maiden was of beautiful form and fair to look on. And when her father and mother were dead, Mordecai took her for his own daughter.
So Mordecai was the cousin of Esther, and they came to Persia probably in one of the waves of deportation that the Babylonians imposed on Judah when it conquered the land. Hadassah means myrtle, and the Persian name for Esther means star. And Mordecai raised her, and they were part of a large Hebrew community that was forced to leave Judah and didn't return with Ezra. In the day of Mordecai and Esther, the land of Judah was regarded as a wild, backwoods place. So the young woman was lovely and beautiful, and said she was beautiful to look at, and that she had a nice form, which means that she was a beautiful woman. Tamshi.
So it came to pass when the king's commandment and his decree was published, and when many maidens were gathered together unto Shushan the castle, to the custody of Hegai, that Esther was taken into the king's house to the custody of Hegai, keeper of the women. And the maiden pleased him, and she obtained kindness of him. And he speedily gave her her ointments with her portions, and the 7 maidens who were meet to be given out of the king's house. And he advanced her and her maidens to the best place in the house of the women. Esther had not made known her people nor her kindred, for Mordecai had charged her that if she not tell it. And Mordecai walked every day before the court of the women's house to know how Esther did and what would become of her.
Mm-hmm. So I had a lot of thoughts about this. When you think about women during that time, I'm thinking in my current mind state that, women wanted to be married, they have children, have a stable home. But the more and more I researched on this back in those times, it might have been a good thing for Esther to be a part of this harem when we look at it in its totality, because during that time, women, their main goal was survival. So being put into this harem, or being the king's wife, she was assured that she was going to be taken care of, that she was going to be have not only the basic things in life, but more than that. So I also thought about that, it was said in some of the commentary that I read that he had like 400 women contest, in the beauty contest. So just think about it for a moment. He's only going to choose one. So, and some of them may become concubines or, other wives or whatever, but you have to really think about it. They're pretty much in like a perpetual widowhood. They're just there waiting to see if he's going to choose them and call them and ask for them to come. But, she was a foreigner, and she probably had a little chance for, maybe a good marriage. I don't know. I don't know if Mordecai was wealthy or if he was poor, but, even the wealthy families benefit from having their daughters as a part of the king. Tamshi.
Now when the turn of every maiden was come to go into King Ahasuerus, after that it had been done to her according to the law of the women, 12 months. For so were the days of their anointing accomplished, to wit, 6 months with oil of myrrh, and 6 months with sweet odors, and with other ointments of the women. When then the maiden came unto the king, whatsoever she desired was given her, to go with her out of the house of the women unto the king's house. Mm-hmm. In the evening she went, and on the morrow she returned into the second house of the women, to the custody of Shashgaz, the king's chamberlain, who kept the concubines. She came in unto the king no more, except the king delighted in her, and she was called by her name.
So So she won favor, probably because she was different. You know, she wasn't like the Persian women. She was a Hebrew. She was an Israelite. So we carry ourselves differently. People know that when they see Israelite women, they know that we're cut from a different cloth. So that could also have given her favor, not to mention this is Yah still working in the story behind the scenes. So they're talking about the beauty preparations that were given, and she was just so humble, and you know that's another reason why she gained favor. She was humble, she was beautiful, and during those times, you know, during that time, I don't know what the women were like, but I know from reading the story that she was different.
Now, in the turn of Esther, the daughter of Abigail, the uncle of Mordecai, who had taken for his daughter, was come to go in unto the king. She required nothing but what Hagar, the king's chamberlain, the keeper of the women, appointed. And Esther obtained favor in the sight of all of them and looked upon her. So Esther was taken unto King Ahasuerus into his house royal in the 10th month, which is the month Tebet, in the 7th year reign. And the king loved Esther above all the women, and she obtained grace and favor in his sight more than all the virgins, so that he set the royal crown upon her head and made her queen instead of Vashti. Then the king made a great feast unto all the princes and his servants, even Esther's feast, and he made a release to the promises and gave gifts according to the bounty of the king.
Yeah, so Esther's life was remarkable even before this. She was a child of Israelite exiles who both died. She was raised in a foreign land by her cousin, and she was taken into this harem and found favor with the king. This remarkable course of events wasn't by accident. Once again, luck or fortune. Yah had his hand all in this, behind the scenes, making it work. Whatever your situation, in the same way we have a place in Yah's plan, whatever your situation, Yah has a purpose for it. It may be a short purpose, it may be a long purpose, perhaps a large purpose or small purpose, but Yah has a reason. To the point of this story, Esther shows us how God is working his plan. God can use evil man. God can use the evil man. God did not make the king drunk or make him demand the queen to present herself before that, yet God allowed this to happen to fulfill his purpose for his greater plan. So we can all find assurance to the truth that no person, no matter how evil they are, can defeat God's plan for our lives, and no matter what they have done, he's always in control. Tamshi.
And when the virgins were gathered together the second time, and Mordecai sat in the king's gate, Esther had not yet made known her kindred nor her people, as Mordecai had charged for her. For Esther did the commandment of Mordecai, like as when she was brought up with him. In those days, while Mordecai sat in the king's gate, two of the king's chamberlains, Bigdan and Teresh, of those that kept the door, were wroth, and sought to lay hands on the king Ahasuerus. And the thing became known to Mordecai, who told it unto Esther the queen. And Esther told the king thereof in Mordecai's name. And when inquisition was made of the matter, and it was found to be so, they were both hanged on a tree, and it was written in a book of the Chronicles before the king.
So Mordecai was still looking out for Esther at this point. The plot to overthrow the king would have put Esther's life in jeopardy as well. He reveals it to Esther, who is immediately able. Understand, at this time, she was immediately able to tell the king. As you can see, once we get further along in the story, you will know that she didn't have that much access to the king later. Apparently, like I said, she had better contact with the king, so she can tell him about the story. She also returns her loyalty to Mordecai and her people to make sure that he gets credit. She made sure that she said that. She didn't have to do that, but it shows that she was aware and grateful for Mordecai's care for her. At this point, it would have been easy for them to just have their own lives and Mordecai go do what he was going to do, and she was protected in the harem, but no, they were still connected by blood. Do you mind going to Proverbs 3:3-6? I'm trying not to. I got so many verses. But both Mordecai and Esther remind me of the book of Proverbs. The next passage seems to describe their characteristics in this chapter.
Okay. Proverbs 3, verse 6.
Yes, 3:3-6.
Proverbs 3, verse 3. Let not kindness and truth forsake thee. Bind them about thy neck. Write them upon the table of thy heart. So shalt thou find grace and good favor in the sight of Jehovah and man. Trust in Jehovah with all thy heart, and lean not upon thy own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he will direct thy paths. Amen.
Mordecai's attitude wasn't, I'm a Hebrew man in exile under a pagan king, so I don't care if he's killed. So he was doing the right thing by alerting them about this, and once again, it's Yah moving. Tamshi.
After these things did King Ahasuerus promote Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, and advanced him and set his seat above all the princes that were with him.
So, this man, Haman, he was an ungodly man, and there was no reason given for Haman's rise up to power. It could have been for a good act, or it could have been political maneuvering in a not so ethical way. But Yah had a purpose for allowing him to be promoted. Haman was a descendant of Agag, who was the king of the Amalekites. Am I saying that right? Because I practiced this. Though that was the King Saul, the Amalekites, that King Saul did not kill in the disobedience to Yah, and Samuel ended up killing instead. Mordecai is from the tribe of Benjamin, the son of Kish, which is the same tribe as King Saul. So it's kind of seeing a connection there, right? But the Amalekites were sworn enemies of Israel for generations. The Amalekites and the Israelites had beef going all the way back to when they were escaping Egypt. They fought the Amalekites in the wilderness under Moshe. So this is a generational beef, like the Hatfields and the McCoys, it just goes on and on and on. It's just generational. So this is a generational beef between Haman and Mordecai, and it went further back, not just the conflicts of their personalities. This was in their blood. Tamshi.
And all the king's servants that went the king's gate bowed down and prostrated themselves before Haman. For the king had to command concerning him. But Mordecai bowed not down, nor prostrated himself.
Yeah, Mordecai's like, no self-respecting Benjamite will bow down to the descendants of the ancient Amalekites, the enemy of the Hebrews. So he wasn't doing it. I don't know if they knew that, but in my mind, this is what I'm saying. I'm saying he was like, no, I'm not bowing down to him. Like, who is he? So, but some commentaries were saying that I read that the reason why he didn't bow down was for religious reasons. But you can see in the Torah that Israelites, they did bow down to the king, but not as if to worship them, just a sign of respect. So that's not it. I think it was just blood memory. I think it's just like, I don't like him for some reason, and I think that might be the reason. He's from that descendants. Tamshi.
Then the king's servants that went the king's gate said unto Mordecai, why transgressest thou the king's commandment? Now it came to pass, when they spoke daily unto him, and he hearkened not unto them, that they told Haman to see whether Mordecai's words would stand, for he had told them that he was a Hebrew. And when Haman saw that Mordecai bowed not down, nor prostrated himself before him, then was Haman full of wrath. But it seemed contemptible in his eyes to lay hands on Mordecai alone, for they had made known to him the people of Mordecai. Wherefore Haman sought to destroy all the Hebrews that were throughout the whole kingdom of Ahasuerus, even the people of Mordecai.
So he just wanted to kill all the Hebrews just because of he was a proud, insecure man that couldn't consider himself a success unless everyone else thought he was a success. Haman sought to destroy the Israelites all through the kingdom, and Haman's anger led him to take out this wrath upon all the Israelites. The problem Haman had exposed a basic hatred for all the Israelite people. Tamshi.
In the first month, which is the month Abib, in the 12th year of King Ahasuerus, they cast pur, that is, the lot, before Haman, from day to day, and from month to month, to the 12th month, which is the month of Adar. And Haman said unto King Ahasuerus, there's a certain people scattered abroad and dispersed among the peoples in all the provinces of thy kingdom, and their laws are diverse from those of every people. Mm-hmm. Neither keep they the king's laws, therefore it profited not the king to suffer them.
So, pur is a Persian word for lot. Something like dice is used to leave a decision to chance or to the gods, if you will. Until it fell on the 12th month. So since it took place in the first month, the casting of the lot determined that the Israelites would not be attacked or massacred for at least 11 months. This proves true in Proverbs 16:13. The lot is cast to my lap. But every decision is from Yahweh. Just a little bit more. I just want to touch a little bit more on that. So Haman's charge was deception. Deception is truth mixed with lies. And yes, the Israelites were a certain scattered people that were dispersed. And yes, they were using their own laws. But at this point, it did not prevent them from keeping the king's law. So it was deception. It was truth mixed with lies. And Haman suggesting to organize a mass murder of the Israelites, he neglected to tell King Xerxes many of these people that it was, he neglected to tell them that he had King Xerxes thinking that it was not a lot of people. He had him thinking that it was just a small people and that, we can get rid of these so-called revolutionaries, but he lied. Tamshi.
If it please the king, let it be written that they be destroyed. And I will pay 10,000 talents of silver into the hands of those that have the charge of the king's business, to bring it into the king's treasuries. And the king took his ring from his hand and gave it unto Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, the Hebrews' enemy. Yeah. And the king said unto Haman, the silver is given to thee, the people also, and to do them as it seemed good to thee.
So again, King Xerxes probably had no idea what he agreed to. As you can see, he was an emotional king. He made a lot of decisions just based on feelings, especially when you go back to what happened with Vashti. So he was pretty emotional. So he had no idea what was happening. He probably believed that it was like a small group of people, like I stated before. Tamshi.
Then were the king's scribes called in the first month on the 13th day thereof, and there was written, according to all that Haman commanded, unto the king's satraps, and to the governors that were over every province, and to the princes of every people, to every province according to the writing thereof, and to every people after their language. In the name of King Ahasuerus was it written, and it was sealed with the king's ring. Mm-hmm. And letters were sent by post into all the king's provinces to destroy, to slay, and to cause perish all Hebrews, both young and old, little children and women, in one day, even upon the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month Adar, and to take the spoil of them for a prey. The copy of the writing to be given out for a decree in every province was to be published unto all the peoples, that they should be ready against that day. The post went forth in haste by the king's commandment, and the decree was given out in Shushan the castle. And the king and Haman sat down to drink, but the city of Shushan was perplexed.
Yeah, they was like, what did these people do? We haven't seen them do anything. Why are you trying to kill them? So everybody, this is Yah working again. As you can see, all of us heard the story a million times, but what happens at the end, you're going to see that probably these same perplexed people were the same people that wanted to become Hebrew. So this decree on the 13th day, but in my commentary, the 14th day was Passover for the Israelites. And ironically, this decree would have been heard during festivals and celebration of deliverance from Egypt. And perhaps this was another way God was reminding them not to worry. Like, I got you when we were in Egypt. I'm going to have you right now. Tumshi.
Chapter 4. Now when Mordecai knew all that was done, Mordecai rent his clothes and put on sackcloth with ashes, and went out into the midst of the city, and cried with a loud and bitter cry. And he came even before the king's gate, for none might enter within the king's gate clothed with sackcloth. And in every province, whithersoever the king's commandment and his decree came, there was great mourning among the Hebrews, and fasting, and weeping, and wailing, and many lay in sackcloth and ashes. And Esther's maidens and her chamberlains came and told it her. And the queen was exceedingly pained, and she sent raiment to clothe Mordecai, and to take his sackcloth from him off. But he accepted it not. Then called Esther for Hatak, one of the king's chamberlains, whom he had appointed to attend upon her, and charged him to go to Mordecai, to know what this was and why it was. So Hathach went forth to Mordecai unto the broad place of the city, which was before the king's gate. And Mordecai told him of all that had happened unto him, and the exact sum of the money that Haman had promised to pay to the king's treasuries for the Hebrews to destroy them. Also he gave him the copy of the writing of the decree that was given out in Shushan to destroy them, to show it unto Esther, and to declare it unto her, and to charge her that she should go unto the king to make supplication unto him, and to make requests before him for her people.
So, go ahead.
You want me to read the whole chapter?
No, pause right here. Mordecai's reaction was immediate all over the Persian Empire with this public expression of grief. Apparently, Esther was in a bubble in the palace because she didn't know what was happening. So this was not surprising, since she wouldn't have been allowed to leave the palace anyway. Since no one in the court knew that Esther was an Israelite, no one would have told her about the command. And this does show how, though she and Mordecai continued to stay in contact, and he cared for her over the years, it was still a secret relationship, which took effort for them both. So she may have sent Mordecai clothes so that he could come into the palace grounds to speak with her, but he would rather talk to the messenger than pretend that he was not in mourning. This shows that Mordecai was not a person to wear a mask, hide emotions, or to play politics. Tumshi.
And Hatak came and told Esther the words of Mordecai. Then Esther spoke unto Hatak and gave him a message unto Mordecai. All the king's servants and the people of the king's provinces do know that whosoever, whether man or woman, shall come unto the king into the inner court, who is not called, there is one law for him, that he be put to death, except such to whom the king shall hold out the golden scepter, that he may live. But I have not been called to come in unto the king these 30 days. And they told to Mordecai Esther's words.
So Esther explained the difficulty behind this, and she was only allowed to come to the king when she was called. So remember, she had access to him before. Now she's, years have passed, so now she's regular, and he calls her when he wants her. So apparently the life of the queen of Persia was not of great intimacy with the king, but whenever he wanted to see her. Esther's freedom to talk to the king had diminished since the plot was revealed against the king's life. So, Tumshi.
Then Mordecai bade them return answer unto Esther. Think not with thyself that thou shalt escape in the king's house, more than all the Hebrews.
Like, you ain't no different. Like, don't think that they're not coming for you. Sometimes you just need a check like that. Don't think they're not coming from you. And I look at that as when we see things that are happening now in the United States, and we see people that are, I don't know anybody's political stance, but when you see people siding with Trump, and you see all of these grifters, and you're like, what? There's no way that these people can actually follow this man. But and you know, I get in TikTok and Facebook jail all the time because I'm telling them they come. You really think that you're exempt from this? You know that they're using you. So he's pretty much telling her the same thing. They're coming for us. They're gonna come for you. Tamshi.
For if thou altogether holdest thy peace at this time, then will relief and deliverance arise to the Hebrews from another place. But thou and thy father's house will perish. And who knoweth whether thou art not come to royal estate for such a time as this? Then Esther bade them return answer unto Mordecai, Go gather together all the Hebrews that are present in Shushan, and fast ye for me, and neither eat nor drink 3 days, night or day. I also and my maidens will fast in like manner, and so will I go in unto the king, which is not according to the law. And if I perish, I perish. So Mordecai went his way and did according to all that Esther had commanded him.
So Yah is the master weaver in all of these events. And I'm continually amazed how the separate strands of experience will come together at a specific time and occasion for a purpose. This is the first time in the book of Esther or Mordecai to reflect on why so much good has happened to them. God doesn't often bless us just for ourselves, but for us to pour out our blessing on everyone else around us. Tamshi.
Okay, chapter 5. Now it came to pass on the 3rd day that Esther put on her royal apparel and stood in the inner court of the king's house, over against the king's house, and the king sat upon his royal throne in the royal house, over against the entrance of the house. And it was so, when the king saw Esther the queen stand in the court, that she obtained favor in his sight. And the king held out to Esther the golden scepter that was in his hand. So Esther drew near and touched the top of the scepter. Then said the king unto Esther, What wilt thou, Queen Esther? For whatever thy request, even to the half of the kingdom, it shall be given to thee. And Esther said, If it seem good unto the king, let the king and Haman come this day unto the banquet that I have prepared for him. Then the king said, Cause Haman to make haste, that it may be done as Esther has said.
So Yah does not need perfect faith. He needs obedience. It isn't the lack of fear that makes courage, but actions in the face of fear that signifies courage. In my own experience, Yah does not always heal. He does not always save. He does not always deliver. But Yah always answers. He always answers us. He always has a plan. He's always doing what's best for us. He always brings us peace, joy, and grace during trials. So as we start looking and seeing how Yah moves through this, you'll see that this was all done at the will. Like, it's not coercion. He's not telling them telling them to do this, to do that. It's automatic. It's that thing that's happening behind. He's not forcing them to do this. These things are just falling in place the way they are.
So the king and Haman came to the banquet that Esther had prepared. And the king said unto Esther at the banquet of wine, Whatever thy petition, it shall be granted to thee. And whatever thy request, even as to half of the kingdom, it shall be performed. That's a good man. Performed. Then answered Esther and said, My petition and my request is, if I have found favor in the sight of the king, and if it please the king to grant my petition and to perform my request, let the king and Haman come to the banquet that I shall prepare for them. And I will do tomorrow as the king has said. Then went Haman forth that day joyful and glad of heart. But when Haman saw Mordecai in the king's gate, he stood not up nor moved for him. Haman was filled with wrath against Mordecai. Nevertheless, Haman refrained himself and went home. And he sent and fetched his friends and Zeresh his wife. And Haman recounted unto them the glory of his riches and the multitude of his children, and everything as to how the king had promoted him, and how he had advanced him above the princes and the servants of the king. Haman said, Moreover, yea, Esther the queen did let no man come in with the king unto the banquet, and she had prepared but myself, and tomorrow also I am invited by her, together with the king. Yet all this availeth to me nothing, so long as I see Mordecai the Hebrew sitting at the king's gate. Then said Zeresh his wife and all his friends unto him, Let a gallows be made of 50 cubits high, and in the morning speak thou unto the king that Mordecai may be hanged thereon. Then go thou and merrily with the king unto the banquet, and the thing pleased Haman, and he caused the gallows to be made.
So Haman could not stand Mordecai. I was like, he's the Hebrew he loved to hate, right? He could not stand him. So, and every time he saw him, he knew that Mordecai wasn't going to bow to him. He just knew it. He couldn't stand him. So he goes and he goes to his wife and he goes to his friends and he's talking about this. And then, I was thinking about this as a friend in friendship. When you are around toxic people or you're around toxic friends, you have to be very careful because some of that stuff comes off on you. These could have been very good people, but hanging around Haman and hanging around that, they become these other things. So you always have to mind the company you keep because you can end up being just like them. Tumshi. Yes. Amen. Tumshi. Chapter 6. We moving, y'all. Okay.
On that night could not the king sleep, and he commanded to bring the book of records of the Chronicles, and they were read before the king. And it was found written that Mordecai had told of BINAH and Teresh, two of the king's chamberlains, of those that kept the door, who have sought to lay hands on the king Ahasuerus. And the king said, what honor and dignity have been done to Mordecai?
God working.
Then said the king's servants that minister unto him, there is nothing done for him.
Mm-hmm. So this is a turning point in the whole story. Could it be that the king couldn't sleep because he was pondering over what Esther wanted? Was it some irrelevant issue, or was it just that Yah didn't allow him to sleep? Whatever the cause not to sleep, he was in the hand of Yah and nothing else that could lead to the next series of events. All kings, both in ancient time, took records of their reign. The Persians had some deplorable records that I read, and a lot of them have not been preserved to this day. But I wonder, had the record read to him because they were boring or because he just liked hearing about himself? Whatever the reason, this was divine by Yah. He was also master over 127 provinces, but he couldn't even get 10 minutes of sleep. So sometimes Yah will disturb your soul. If it's something that he wants you to do, if it's something that you need to wake up in the country folk, the midnight hour, and pray for. Sometimes he will just disturb your sleep until he gets the answer, or it's about obedience. Like I said, it's not about just faith. He needs obedience as well. Tumshi.
And the king said, who was in the court? Now Haman was come into the outer court of the king's house to speak unto the king to hang Mordecai on the gallows that he had prepared for him. And the king's servant said unto him, behold, Haman stand in the court. And the king said, let him come in.
Mm-hmm.
So Haman came in, and the king said unto him, what shall be done unto the man whom the king delighted to honor? Now Haman said in his heart, whom would the king delight to honor besides myself? And Haman said unto the king,
Haman, man.
for the man whom the king delighted to honor, let royal apparel be brought, which the king uses to wear, and the horse that the king rideth upon, and on whose head a crown royal is set. And let the apparel on the horse be delivered to the hand of one of the king's most noble princes, that they may array the man therewith, whom the king delighted to honor, and cause him to ride on horseback through the street of the city, and proclaim before him, thus shall it be done to the man whom the king delighted to honor. Then the king said to Haman, make haste and take the apparel on the horse, as thou hast said, and do even so to Mordecai the Hebrew, that sitteth at the king's gate. Let nothing fail of all that thou hast spoken. Then took Haman the apparel on the horse and arrayed Mordecai, and caused him to ride through the street of the city, and proclaim before him, thus shall it be done unto the man who the king delighted to honor.
Okay, so can you imagine what Haman was doing? Like he thought it was all about him, and then he was like, no, it's Mordecai. So Yah is working. He's working behind the scenes. But I wanted to just go back and just say, it was no coincidence that Haman had entered the court just at that moment. It was no coincidence that Haman came at the moment to ask for the execution of Mordecai. It was no coincidence that the king wanted to order Mordecai just at that moment. And if the book of Esther shows us anything, it shows you that Yah manages the affairs of men, always. Even without their knowledge, he's managing the affairs for us. God knows, Yah knows what he's doing and there's no coincidences or surprises. Esther wasn't lucky to be king. Mordecai wasn't lucky to have heard of the assassination plot. It wasn't luck or chance that, like I said, that Haman entered the royal court. It was just Yah working. It was just Yah working. But let's just get back to how bad Haman felt when he had to parade Mordecai around. That's one of my favorite parts of this book, because sometimes it was the ultimate humiliation for Haman to honor Mordecai in such a way, but humiliation is only really humiliation when it's public. Tumshi.
And Mordecai returned to the king's gate, but Haman had hastened to his house, mourning and having his head covered. And Haman recounted unto Zeresh his wife and all his friends everything that had befallen him. Then said his wise men and Zeresh his wife unto him, If Mordecai, before whom thou hast begun to fall, be of the seed of the Hebrews, thou shalt not prevail against him, but shalt surely fall before him. While they were yet talking with him, came to the king's chamberlain and hastened to bring Haman unto the banquet that Esther had prepared. Mm-hmm. Chapter 7. So the king and Haman came to the banquet with Esther the queen. And the king said again unto Esther on the second day of the banquet of wine, Whatever thy petition, Queen Esther, it shall be granted thee. And whatever thy request, even if it's half of the kingdom, it shall be performed. Then Esther the queen answered and said, If I have found favor in thy sight, O king, and if it please the king, let my life be given to me at my petition, and my people at my request. For we are sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, to be slain, and to perish. But if we have been sold for bondmen and bondwomen, I have held my peace, for the adversary is not worthy that the king be damaged.
So the king must be exhausted at this point because he couldn't sleep. He may have had a busy day. He had been drinking wine. I imagine he was asking in a plea, just tell me already. Let me know what you want. I already promised you half of the kingdom. You just let me know what you want. So he was in a place to really listen and understand, and that was important to Esther. Tumshi.
Then spoke the king Ahasuerus and said unto Esther the queen, Who is he, and where is he that presumed in his heart to do so? And Esther said, An adversary and an enemy, even this wicked Haman. Then Haman was terrified before the king and the queen. And the king arose in his wrath from the banquet of wine and went into the palace garden. But Haman remained to make request for his life to Esther the queen. For he saw that there was evil determined against him by the king. Then the king returned out of the palace garden until the place of the banquet of wine. And Haman was fallen upon the couch whereon
Crying.
Esther was. Then said the king, Will he even force the queen before me in the house? And as the word went out of my king's mouth, thy covered Haman's face. Then said Harbona, one of the chamberlains that went before the king, Behold also the gallows 50 cubits high, which Haman had made for Mordecai, who spoke good for the king, standing in the house of Haman. And the king said, Hang him thereon. So they hanged Haman on the gallows that he had prepared for Mordecai. Then was the king's wrath assault.
So can you imagine when she's like, it's Haman, the needle goes, scratches the record, it's like a soap opera. You like it. This is amazing. I love this. And I can see, I already got the people who I think are Mordecai. I can see it. That's when, like I said earlier, when you come into knowledge yourself, these books and these verses are hit you in a special place, because I never read the book of Esther like this before. Never. But now, Torah Yah, that I know who I am. I know I'm an Israelite. And I'm proud of it. Tumshi.
Chapter 8. On that day did the king Ahasuerus give the house of Haman the Jews, enemy unto Esther the queen. And Mordecai came before the king, for Esther had told what he was unto her. And the king took off his ring, which he had taken from Haman, and gave it unto Mordecai. And Esther sat Mordecai over the house of Haman. And Esther spoke yet again before the king, and fell down at his feet, and besought him with tears to put away the mischief of Haman the Agagite, Agagite, and his device that he had devised against the Hebrews. Then the king held out to Esther the golden scepter. So Esther arose and stood before the king. And she said, if it please the king, and if I have found favor in his sight, and the thing seemed right before the king, and I be pleasing in his eyes, let it be written to reverse the letters devised by Haman the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, which he wrote to destroy the Hebrews that are in all the king's provinces. For how can I endure to see the evil that shall come unto my people, or how can I endure to see the destruction of my kindred?
So Haman was a disturbed man anyway. He seemingly achieved everything, but ended up with nothing to even pass on to his family. One might say that he climbed the ladder of success, but it was leaning on the wrong building. So think of how hard Haman had to work to achieve all of that. Yet it was for nothing. It was a waste. He worked really hard, but he had nothing to show for it. It ultimately gave his life for that. And now Mordecai had become super rich, I'm assuming, in the place of Haman. And this promotion was a blessing that neither Esther or Mordecai prayed for. The truth about their relationship came out, and they didn't have to keep it in secret anymore. The only thing lacking was reversing Haman's decree. So, Tamshi.
Then the king Ahasuerus said unto Esther the queen, and to Mordecai the Hebrew, behold, I have given Esther the house of Haman, and him that have hanged upon the gallows, because he laid his hand upon the Hebrews. Write he also concerning the Hebrews, as liketh you, in the king's name, and seal it with the king's ring. For the writing which is written in the king's name, and sealed it with the king's ring, may no man reverse. Then were the king's scribes called at the time in the 3rd month, which is the month Ziwan, on the 23rd day thereof. And it was written according to all that Mordecai commanded concerning the Jews, even to the satraps and the governors and the princes of the provinces, which are from India unto Ethiopia, 127 provinces, until every province according to the writing thereof. And unto every people after their language, and to the Hebrews according to their writing and according to their language. And they wrote in the name of King Ahasuerus, and sealed it with the king's ring, and sent letters by post on horseback, riding on swift steeds that were used in the king's service, bred of the stud. Then the king had granted the Hebrews that were in every city to gather themselves together, and to stand for their life, to destroy and to slay and to cause perish all the forces of the people and province that would assault them, their little ones and women, and to take the spoil of them for a prey. Upon one day in all the provinces of King Ahasuerus, namely upon the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month of Adar, the copy of the writing to be given out for a decree in every province was to be published unto all the peoples, and that the Jews should be ready against that day to avenge themselves on their enemies. So the posts that rode upon the swift steeds that were used in the king's service went out, being hastened and pressed on by the king's commandment, and the decree was given out in Shushan Castle.
Yeah. So Yah's purpose in all matters goes further than just sparing the Hebrews from destruction. He also raised up Mordecai in these high places, and then the joy that came from the actual day he was appointed, that the Israelites will actually be attacked. Yet they were able to defend themselves, and nevertheless, because of the decree of the king, they were assured victory. In the same way, of course, as they saw Yah working on the behalf of his people, I think I skipped a little bit further ahead. But anyway, they wanted to be they wanted to be Hebrews. They saw what Yah was doing for them, so they wanted not. They were scared too, because we were ready to roll. So they were scared, and but not only that, they saw that how Yah was working with them. The people rejoiced at their deliverance, and this whole time they watched their enemies gathering weapons. Think about this, like put this in perspective, what's happening in your life. Planning to ruin them, but Yah provided a way out. Yah's miracles are snowballing with momentum. Just when it seems the darkest and that Haman was winning, Yah demonstrated that he is in control the whole time. And everything is falling into order. Blessings are being poured out. The truth is being revealed. And the long wait, but deliverance is coming. This is a reoccurring theme about our history. It's always happening to us. When we face an impossible task or an impossible foe, we must turn to Yah for help. When we are in the midst of a trial that seems like forever, sometimes it seems that Yah has forgotten or ignored us. He hasn't. Deliverance will come. Tamshi.
Okay.
Chapter 9.
Chapter 9. Now in the 12th month, which is the month Adar, on the 13th day of the same, when the king's commandment and his decree drew near to be put in execution, in the day that the enemies of the Hebrews hoped to have ruled over them, whereas it was turned to the contrary, that the Hebrews had ruled over them that hated them. The Hebrews gathered themselves together in their cities throughout all the provinces of the king Ahasuerus to lay hands on such as sought their hurt. And no man could withstand them, for the fear of them had fallen upon all thy peoples. And all the princes of the provinces, and the satraps, and the governors, and they that did the king's business, helped the Hebrews, because the fear of Mordecai was fallen upon them. Mm-hmm. For Mordecai was great in the king's house, and all his fame went forth throughout all the provinces. For the man Mordecai waxed greater and greater. And the Hebrews smote all their enemies with the stroke of the sword, and with the slaughter and destruction, and did what they would unto them that hated them. And in Shushan the castle, the Hebrews slew and destroyed 500 men, and Parshan Datha, and Dalphon, and Aspatha, and Puritha, and Adalia, and Aradia, and Parmashta, and Arasa, and Arada, and Vazada, the 10 sons of Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Hebrews' enemies, slew them, but on the spoil they laid not their hand.
So we see not only did Yah deliver Esther from Haman's plot, but we get to see how the nation of Yisrael gets delivered because of Esther's actions. The impossible situation that Esther found herself in could have made her self-centered and just try to survive by hiding, but she chose not. And Mordecai said she would not have lasted long anyway. So Yah has placed her in the right place and at the right time, but she has had to do the hard things as trust him. Now her people must do hard things as well. So that's, oh Lord, I'm sorry, go back, I dropped. So they must do hard things as well. So in my studies, I read that, some people were criticizing Esther for not showing love to her enemy. And as I'm reading, I said to myself, we're not the back of the book people. Like when someone does something to us, we're not those type of people. So yet she displayed the same principles that Joshua did. She would not settle for nothing less than total victory. Haman's sons were also descendants of the Amalekites. So I'm going to go back to the part where Saul did not kill them, and then Samuel ended up killing them. And when Saul fell, but later a descendant from the tribe of Benjamin, the son of Kish, named Mordecai, completed Yah's judgment against the Amalekites. The last conflict between Israel and the Amalekites, this conflict, which began with Joshua in the desert, was finally finished by Mordecai and Esther in the king's palace. Tamshi.
On verse 11, on that day the number of those that were slain in Shushan the castle was brought before the king. And the king said unto Esther the queen, the Hebrews have slain and destroyed 500 men in Shushan the castle, and the 10 sons of Haman. What then have they done in the rest of the king's provinces? Now whatever thy petition, it shall be granted thee, and whatever thy request, further it shall be done. Mm-hmm. Then said Esther, if it please the king, let it be granted to the Hebrews that are in Shushan to do tomorrow also according to the day's decree. And let Haman's 10 sons be hanged upon the gallows. Mm-hmm. And the king commanded it to be done, a decree that was given out in Shushan. And they hanged Haman's 10 sons. And the Hebrews that were in Shushan gathered themselves together on the 14th day, also of the month of Adar, and slew 300 men in Shushan. But on the spoil they laid not their hand. And the other Hebrews that were in the king's provinces gathered themselves together, and stood for their lives, and had rest from their enemies, and slew them that hated them, 75,000. But on the spoil they laid not their hand. On the 13th day of the month of Adar, and on the 14th day of the same, they rested and made it a day of feasting and gladness. But the Hebrews that were in Shushan assembled together on the 13th day thereof, and on the 14th thereof, and on the 15th day of the same they rested and made it a day of feasting and gladness. Therefore do the Hebrews of the villages that dwell in the unwallowed towns make the 14th day of the month after a day of gladness and feasting and a good day, and of sending portions one to another.
So just to let you get a breath, because I'm going to go straight into 10, but those were the principles of remembering how great Yah has delivered them. So ready for chapter 10?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Chapter 10, we done?
Yeah, we're ready.
Oh, chapter 10.
Just read it out.
And the king Ahasuerus laid a tribute upon the land and upon the isles of the sea, and all the acts of his power and of his might, and the full account of the greatness of Mordecai, how the king advanced him, and they not written in the book of the chronicles of the kings of Media and Persia. For Mordecai the Hebrew was next unto King Ahasuerus, and great among the Hebrews, and accepted of the multitude of his brethren, seeking the good of his people, and speaking peace to all his seed. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Thank you. I want to just, I still got a few minutes, so I just got a couple things that I wanted to say as we sum up. Thank you, Rebecca. The book of Esther shows how the hand of God can move supernaturally and in a natural way. And think of how Yah arranged Esther's whole story. Yah arranged for the noble queen Vashti to lose her place. Yah arranged for a competition to replace Queen Vashti. Yah arranged for Esther to enter this competition, and Yah arranged for special favor for Esther among other women and men, and Yah arranged for Mordecai to have access to both Esther and the affairs of the kingdom, and Yah arranged the lot that was cast to give 11-month warning before the planned massacre, and Yah arranged that the decree commanded that the Hebrews be killed by private hands instead of the Persian army, which would have been much more difficult. And Yah arranged that Haman restrain his anger and not kill Mordecai immediately. Yah arranged for Esther to delay her request, first asking for a queen's banquet with the king and then another banquet. And Yah arranged for Haman's anger to come to a peak on a particular day. And Yah arranged for the king to have sleepless nights. And Yah arranged for the king to send for a certain book during his sleepless nights. And Yah arranged for Xerxes to listen to the passage about Mordecai in that particular book. Yah's hand in history never rules out our actions. The actions of Esther and Mordecai were critical into the preservation of our people. Yah, in his wise plan, allows his people to be tested, sometimes so severely. We must not, I don't know what I wrote here. Take my time. From the beginning of the Torah to the end with the prophets, our ancestors faced impossible situations that only Yah could have helped them with. Even though Israel's exile didn't end in the events of Esther, Yah delivered them and provided spoils of celebration to go with it. His deliverance isn't always as planned, and it's not always when we want it, but it's always right on time. Because we must grow, we must continue to grow in Yah. His deliverance rarely looks like the same things twice. We don't go into trials just to survive. We go to end up better off than where we were. Perhaps today, you need deliverance. Like, there's a lot of things that we need deliverance from. And everyone that I talk to seems to have some kind of major life thing that's going on, or a life-altering event. And you may be facing overwhelming hardships, or you may have an enemy that seems like they want to destroy some aspect of your life. And Perhaps mental health is your Haman. And perhaps some people in your family may be your Haman. And perhaps your job may be your Haman. Drugs may be your Haman. And just know that Yah can deliver, but it requires us to do hard things. Instead of preserving her own life, Esther strived to protect the lives around us. Oftentimes, like when I feel lonely, I found that if I brought comfort to those around me, I would not be as lonely, and my own loneliness would disappear. Or when we're needy, I gave to those who needed more, and somehow I always had enough. When I was afraid, I lost that fear when I needed to protect those that were around me. The faith of Yah requires us to give up our desperate needs to care for ourselves and start looking into caring for others. Our comfort, our needs, our wants, our safety is important to Yah. I'm not saying we can't deliver ourselves out of impossible. I'm saying that we can't deliver ourselves out of impossible situations. We have to leave that to Yah. We can go through, and we can through Yah hand to deliver through Yah's hand to deliver others out of their impossible situations. So you might be facing impossible situations that's keeping you awake at night, and it may be creating anxiety and depression. Call out to Yah. Call out to Yah. I mean, I remember sometimes when, as a little girl, when I would be in the kitchen or I would hear my mother, she would be up before everyone, or my grandmother, and that woman would be in there singing to the top of her voice. That was her quiet time while everyone was asleep. And then there was sometimes when things get the burdens get so heavy that you can't pray. And I've been there to the point where I just said, Yah, help. That's all I got. I can't do anything more. That's all I got. So what I'm just telling you, to just call on him and to look, and he's going to hear you, and he's going to deliver you. And that's my Esther speech. Hallelujah. Thank you. Thank you. I would be remiss if I didn't thank Mordecai for helping me, getting me through this, the anxiety and the countless, like if you're in the car, if you're in the house, Esther is playing, just trying to get this in my head. So thank you. Torah.